Welcome to our episode of Biblical Archaeology from the Ground Down. Sponsored by Bible Interact and hosted by Dr. George Sparks. Today's special guest is experienced field archaeologist Dr. David E. Graves. Now let's explore the field of archaeology in today's episode.
Good day, people. My name is Dr. George Sparks. I'm with my co-host, Dr. David Graves. He received his PhD from Aberdeen University in Scotland. Today, we're going to talk about a very unique tomb. It's called the tomb of Beni-Hasan in Middle Egypt. I think it's an extremely fantastic location myself, and I'm sure everybody here is going to be interested. Dr. Graves, at this time, do you have something, before we get started on the Beni-Hasan tombs, do you have something you'd like to say to kind of like get people ready for your PowerPoint or anything?
Well, we're going to do a PowerPoint today on the Beni-Hasan mural, probably one of the best known examples of what we might envision Abraham or Joseph or the people of Israel that were down living in Egypt. So it gives a picture, a little like a photograph, to look in through time back to how life was back then. So I think it's kind of neat. It gives us a good idea as to what was happening down there during that time period. And it's not the children of Israel, to be clear. It's not Joseph, it's not Abraham, but it's very culturally appropriate and some good parallels, and so we can get an idea of the trips and the travels they would do and how they would do it. So,
and the reason why I have my gloves on is because once again I got pottery out of the vault from the Museum of Archaeology and Biblical History. We'll see how this goes, and then later on I'm going to be sharing pottery from what we call the biblical period of the Middle Bronze Age. Now, the Middle Bronze Age can go on for almost 500 years. So 2000 BC to around 1550 BC. So that we'll just round it off to 500 years. And so that's quite of a span where we can find pottery at the early part of 2000 and towards the end around the 16th century. So that's what we're going to share as well. I like that slide. That's really cool.
I just pulled this together using a bit of AI just to kind of give an idea of, you'll see how this relates to the coat of many colors when we get into the mural itself.
This is Biblical Archaeology from the Ground Down. If I didn't say that, and we are sponsored by Bible Interact, and the artifacts are on loan from the Museum of Archaeology and Biblical History. So we're clear on that, and I said it.
Good. Well, the area we're talking about, as you said, Middle Egypt, the place we're talking about is Beni-Hasan down here on the Nile River, just north of Akhenaten, where the Tel El Amarna letters were discovered. And it was discovered by the tomb of Khnumhotep II. Percy Newberry, also involved in the discovery. I wouldn't say, they're not translations, but they did some drawings of the paintings in these tombs. It's the Western Semites. These are Asiatics and Canaanites and Syro-Palestinian clan that were visiting Egypt at the time. So we have a picture going back as to what these people's groups looked like. Here's a photograph of what the tombs look like today. There's some 39 in the upper tombs, quite a few of them in the area. So there's upper and lower tombs. It mostly contains tombs of various officials. From the first intermediate period, this is 2181 to 2055 BC, to the Middle Kingdom. But late Old Kingdom tombs are found there as well, like Ippy's tomb that's also been discovered. But the one that we're interested in having a look at is this Khnumhotep II. This is his tomb right here, and it dates to the Middle Kingdom, about 2000 to 1800 BC, I think. Here's what the inside of the tomb looks like. These beautiful paintings, the hieroglyphs, and the typical bird hunting in the marsh motif that we see. There's a close-up of it. I actually painted this on my wall years ago when I painted it on the wall. It's just a wall painting, but I did it life-size, going down the steps to my basement. I had an Egyptian room that I had done. Here we have some hunting birds in a net. And this is the famous mural of Beni-Hasan. We want to have a look at it with the hieroglyphs there. So it's a bit faded. Here's a little bit sharper picture of it. Now I'm going to point out some of the individuals here on it. Here it's drawn, and you have a better image of what it really looks like. The original down below, And then the painting above that pictures these Western Semites, Asiatics, Canaanites, and Syro-Palestinians that were visiting about 1892 BC. So here we have the Asiatics. They have the typical kinds of pointed beards. There's the Asiatics. And then the Egyptians are the ones with the white skirts on, darker skin as well. Those are the Egyptians. You'll notice they have a little goatee beard. And there's a few other things that we notice here in the pictures as well. There's some weapons, the bow, and that almost looks like a duckbill axe, club. There's a lyre or harp. And then they have these multicolored garments. In contrast to the Egyptians who had the white, these were all multicolored. And that's how they painted them in the pictures. So Joseph's coat of many colors gives us sort of a glimpse back into the cultural period where they did have clothing that was multicolored, as the Bible describes Joseph. There's a bellows. They were doing metal work as well. And there's an anvil here on the donkey's back in the middle right there. There's the anvil and the hieroglyphs. And there we have a Canaanite bringing tribute to Egypt. And there's some ibex. And here we have the Canaanites bringing tribute. They want to bring their offerings. They want to bring their special gifts. And same as today, when you have a dignitary that visits from another country, they'll give them something. There's the Nile River. And that kind of ends my quick view of the Beni-Hasan mural. I think it's pretty neat because we get a chance to look back in history and actually have a photograph, as it were,
Beautiful
taken.
pictures you got. I really like your selection.
Yeah, it's kind of neat. Okay, so we can discuss now maybe a little bit about the Beni-Hasan in more detail if you'd like.
Well, you know what? I'm glad you went first because, you know, you're expert with these PowerPoints, and I threw one together. So to let people know we had two PowerPoints, and I don't want to be redundant on what we're talking about. And of course, yours is very clever the way you did it and pointed out the Asiatics. And you used a variety of different words: Asiatics, Semitics, Canaanites. And it actually that's pretty accurate because according to what was it, the Hellenistic priest Manetho?
Manetho, yeah.
Okay, Manetho.
It's a tomato. I'm Canadian. I generally
Okay. So anyway,
I generally pronounce things
he
incorrectly.
referred to them as the Hyksos, meaning the foreign rulers. Y'all come on down. So basically, and here we have the it's called the Amu procession. AMU, the Amu procession. A total of, I believe it was like 38 it describes 38 entering in. And we'll take a look at your slide. Could you bring up one of your slides of the procession?
Yeah, I'll bring that up again. And then
let's take a look at it. Maybe I don't have to do my PowerPoint. If I do, I'll bring it up where it's totally different, where we're describing pottery. There we go. The horseshoes represent 10. So you got 3 horseshoes. All right, I'll just call them horseshoes. That's the Egyptian number 10. And then we got 7 vertical lines. It's a total of 37 of the Amu entering into Egypt. And if we follow the hieroglyphs, it's actually describing the product that they're bringing in. They're bringing into the governor, Khnumhotep. Now, where you see that eye, the eye, is kind of a clue what's going on because they're bringing in a product called Mesdemet. Mesdemet is eyeshadow that is brought from the Sinai. So some of the products that they use to make this Mesdemet, this eyeshadow, comes from the Sinai, and it's a location which they would travel through to get into the northern Egypt. When I say northern Egypt, it's actually called Lower Egypt because the water flows from south, where the high mountain area, to the north. But right. That's right, we call it Lower Egypt. Okay, now if we look very carefully on the far right, the Egyptian with the papyrus scroll on the far right, he has some hieroglyphs on there, and it's describing, number 1, the year of the Pharaoh. So once we have the year of the rule of the Pharaoh, we know that it was the 12th dynasty. Also, it talks about the people that are entering in, the Amu of Shu, spelled S-H-U. Now, some scholars actually have made suggestions where these Shu have come from. Number 1, we know that, as you said, you gave us 3 identities of these people being Canaanite. Are they of a Semitic origin, or we could just say generally Asiatic. That Egyptian holding that scroll is actually Khnumhotep's son. He's leading 37 of the Amu. But if we look very carefully, what is his son wearing? His son is actually wearing the eyeshadow, which the Amu are bringing in, the Mesdamet. And I thought that's kind of fantastic. That we have an example of what's going on. But these people that are coming in are foreigners, but they're not, you could say, they must not be a threat, because these foreigners are entering in with weapons. They got their spears, they got their bows and arrows. So they must not be posing a threat as they are proceeding through Lower Egypt. So they're coming down by the way of Horus, and they're entering in from the north, moving south to the location of Beni-Hasan, which is the Middle Egypt. So they have been traveling, and they're presenting themselves in their garments, these Asiatic garments of many colors, and they're made of wool.
Right.
Now, wool can actually be dyed, where the linen fabric that the Egyptians are wearing cannot. That's why it's this white color, right? So, but the garments that the Canaanites, I shouldn't say Asiatics, are wearing, it's not, each thread is dyed that color. So when it's woven, it gives this appearance, this
beautiful patterns,
decoration. So it's really fantastic. It's really elaborate cloth. Now, the Asiatics, as we read in the biblical narrative, and I'm going to bring this down to the time period of Jacob and Joseph, which would be possibly during the Hyksos period, or possibly, I'm going to say, the 15th dynasty, and I'm just being very generous saying possibly, all right? But we know that the Asiatics had a certain hairstyle and beard, where the Egyptians were clean shaven. So usually they had, if they were upper class, they had what we call a false beard, a false goatee, and they wore wigs. Why? Because they were concerned about body lice. So the Egyptians were clean shaven. And we know this because when Joseph invited his family into Egypt, he had to make a deal with the Pharaoh, right? They have to go up north because they were pastoralists. They had animals, and they were not clean shaven, so they remained up in north in the land of Goshen. That's what's given to them, because they would be, the word in the biblical narrative, I think, is abhorrent to the Egyptians, because they're not clean shaven. So there is a separation to the Egyptians, even though they are upper class in this. But this is 12th dynasty. What we're looking at here is 12th dynasty. So I am differentiating in the biblical narrative a span of hundreds of years.
Sure.
Just to make people aware of that. So with
the other
that
thing
in mind, I think people would find this interesting, that there was a young artist that got his first touch of drawing in the Egyptian tomb of Beni-Hasan. You know who this young artist was? 17-year-old Howard Carter.
Carter?
Yeah. Now, if people don't know who Howard Carter is, well, he stayed in Egypt, became known as an archaeologist, and he discovered and found the tomb of King Tut in 1922. So here's a young man that got started as an artist of all things, and later on becomes has a discovery that even to this day is very well known. And this happened also
George, we did a podcast a few weeks ago on the untouchable mummy as well, so that he discovered. So,
see, it's very, very true.
So Carter's been working in the area for quite a long time, knew his stuff, and so it's neat that he got a chance to do some of these drawings. Another thing you see here is there's the anvil, and we have the billows. So they were doing metal work. So they were probably working in the Sinai or maybe the copper mines or something, but they were making their weapons. So the metal parts of the weapons, industrious people, a couple of donkeys there and a couple of ibex that they're using. They're probably milking them and getting the milk from the goats or the ibex.
They bring in their kids. As you can see, they got their children. Looks like they got the wives. And they have a representative of the Amu, and his name is Abishira, because in front of these Egyptians, you can see there's hieroglyphs describing their positions. The one holding the scroll, of course, is the son of Amunhotep. And then we have Khnumhotep. And then the one with the fancy clothes behind the Egyptians, that's Abishira. That's the leader of the the leader of the Amu. And how many Amu? Well, we know there's 37 total, even though in this mural we have a total of 18, which representing the clan that's coming in, or the group that's coming in. And it looks like, we got different reasons that the Asiatics enter into the Northern Nile Delta. At times, political alliances are different. So at one time, they could become merchants. At one time, as we read the biblical narrative, they come in because of famine. And sometimes they come in also as slaves. So there's different, but here they are merchants and they are well dressed.
Yeah.
And they're definitely not seen as adversaries because they're bringing in their weapons. And maybe because of this, we can actually look at this in a archaeological perspective, because throughout time, we have charts in archaeology, and we call it time sequence dating, thanks to Sir Flinders Petrie, who invented or you could say made the first suggestion that pottery is subject to the time period of which it is made. So the pottery that's made in what we call the Middle Bronze Age, or the early part of the Middle Bronze Age, such as 2000, I'm just being very general, of the time period being represented in this mural. So we have pottery from this early part of the Middle Bronze Age, and we also have pottery from the latter part of the Middle Bronze Age, such as the 15th dynasty, which would be the 17th and 16th century BC. I don't want to get people confused. The second intermediate period, and possibly the time period, I'm keeping it general, David, I'm being nice, for everybody.
Yeah.
A time period where the patriarchs entered into Egypt. Now, the patriarchs, as we know, according to biblical narrative, starting with Abraham, migrated into Egypt from Mesopotamia. So we're thinking of Asiatics. And in the biblical narrative, we see things that are similar, at least being suggested, such as the garment of many colors.
Well, George, would it be a good thing now to perhaps point out some of the pottery that you have there for the day?
We could go on and on about this, but what would make this presentation of Beni-Hasan different than any other presentations of the mural of Beni-Hasan, because they're out there on the internet, they are,
Sure,
is that we have pottery, David.
Yes.
And we have pottery from these time periods. And I have them actually on a table behind me. So maybe it'd be better if I bring them forward, because the microphone's here. And I don't know if I get far back, if the camera's going to be.
I'll do
Let's
that.
find out. Let's find out. And of course, David does the editing. So if it doesn't look right, we're all going to blame David. Okay, Dave?
Yeah, well, I can edit it out.
All right, let's take a look.
I can chop.
Okay, first of all, what did these Amu, according to the hieroglyphs, were bringing into Egypt? They were bringing in to the governor of the Eastern Desert, Khnumhotep Mesdemet, and Mesdemet was the eyeshadow. Now, if I was going to give like an example of wearing the eyeshadow, you might accuse me of being woke, David, and I don't want that. So I'm going to stick to the pottery.
No woke on this podcast.
Okay, first of all, we have the baboon. And this faience, that's the material it's made out of. And it probably dates to more of an Iron Age period, not to the Middle Bronze.
Right.
But it still is an Egyptian vessel, cosmetic vessel, in which they would put on, here's the applicator, in which they would put on this eyeshadow. Now, I'm not sure if this is how they do it, because I don't. Okay. But this is an authentic item. Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
Well over 2,000 years old.
And of course, the baboon is one of their gods. So that's we often see that on the Chnoptic jars.
That's just a beautiful, beautiful piece.
The baboon is often identified as one of the heads on the Chnoptic jars.
It sure is. I think the baboon and also the god. And then we also have an Egyptian alabaster vessel. Now, what do you put in alabaster? Perfume and cosmetics.
Yeah.
Right. So an alabaster vessel. Cool stuff. Now, in that mural, we actually saw that these Amu were bringing in certain types of weapons. And one you saw was possibly
the duckbill
axe. And maybe, when you edit this, you can bring out these items up so people can see it again, where this possibly is displayed in the mural. But also we have different styles of Canaanite axe blades, because the mural in a way is kind of non-descriptive, whether it's a duck's bill axe, which would be Egyptian, or if it's a Canaanite style, which would
Right.
be like this. So what I did, David, is because we are what we are and we do what we do, I took both of them from the museum's collection, and I said, just to be sure, we'll take both of them.
Cover
right?
your bases. Yeah.
Yes, because we're selfish like that. All right.
Well, and we have it. Why
Here we
not?
have it. Might as well flaunt it. Now, another type of axe that we see, not in this mural, but we see from that period is some call it the epsilon axe. And you can see where the holes are at. Let me see if we can, right? There we go.
Yeah.
So you can see where it was attached to the wooden
Handle.
handle.
Yeah.
So a little bit more different style of being dangerous. So here we just showed 3 different styles of axe blades that could be represented throughout the Middle Bronze Age period. Now, later on, we also talked about the time period of the Hyksos. And the Hyksos is a word that was used in the Hellenistic period by an Egyptian priest, a historian, mentioned also in the book of Josephus, right? In the writings of Josephus. And the word Hyksos simply means foreign rulers. And the Hyksos period also is representing a time when these foreign elements, whether it be the Canaanites, whether it be the Semitics, whether it be the Asiatics, controlled that northern Nile Delta in a capital location, in their capital, called Avaris. And it was excavated by a gentleman called Manfred Ito. And in his excavations, he found ruins of residential buildings, residential homes, domiciles, and in the vicinity of a very large home, they found the ruins of a sculpture of a Semitic man, possibly somebody of authority, and it still had faint evidence of paint, representing a garment like we see in Beni-Hasan, a garment of many colors. Is that fair enough?
I did a watercolor drawing for a friend of mine, an Egyptologist, Douglas Petrovich, for one of his books. So I'll put the picture I did of the drawing of that particular individual from Avaris up on the screen for everyone to see. I got a dagger there.
Yeah, here we got the Hyksos dagger. Now the Hyksos period, the weaponry changes. So here we have a Hyksos dagger. Now if I turn it sideways, you can see the little rivets that once attached a wooden handle.
Right.
So here's the handle. So it attaches the wood on both sides, but it also has to be held together on the end, right?
Right.
So this is the pommel that attaches at the end. And you can see a little hole in the pommel where they put a rivet through it.
Yep.
So it attaches the handle. Make sense?
Yeah.
People, don't want to be confusing. So a Hyksos dagger dating to the 15th dynasty in Egypt, 17th, 16th century BC. So you're looking at a weapon right here that is what, around 3,600 years old? In pretty good condition, I thought.
Nice. Nice that you have the pommel as well.
Right? Now, David, we're going to take a look at some pottery. Well, let's see if I can. This right here is a Middle Bronze Age vessel. And you could say it's a large juglet because it's definitely not big enough to be a crater, but it's a large juglet. But what is unique about this early Middle Bronze Age period, David, is that around 2000 BC, they started to make pottery by using the potter's wheel instead of forming pottery by hand.
Right.
Now you can see the striations of the pottery as it was spun, the clay, on the wheel.
Right.
Now, if we go back before 2000 BC, usually the pottery only had a flat base. That means if you sat it down on something, there's chances that where you sat it down on, whether it be some kind of a ledge or a table, could actually crack that vessel. So what they did is they actually decided to make a ring base, looks like a ring.
Right.
So now you get a little bit of distance between the vessel and the table, and also it becomes more stable. But look at this, the way it is designed, because we got a curvature to it, lots of curves, and we call this carenation. This curvature and carenation is one of the designs that we see in this Middle Bronze Age period. It starts around 2000 BC, and it is these people that are now using the potter's wheel, and they are becoming creative with their pottery. Look how thin it is. It is actually a very, very beautiful piece. Look at this handle. The handle is really, really cool. Now, in the Middle Bronze Age, early in the Middle Bronze Age, and then later on, the handles do change.
Sure.
The styles change. Now, people are familiar with a bicycle. A bicycle has two wheels. Well, sometimes the handles are in two pieces, so we call it bifurcated. And sometimes they're in three sections, and we call them trifurcated. There you go.
Trifurcated handle.
And trifurcated is extremely rare. Look at the condition from the museum. Absolutely beautiful.
Oh, wow.
Now, as we get to the rim right here, if the rim is pointed and it goes inward, we call that everted. But if the rim comes outward, we call that extroverted.
Yeah.
So this is what we call everted. It comes outward. That's it.
Right.
That is everted, comes out. You think it'd be extroverted, but that's only for us. It's only for people.
Beautiful piece. Beautiful piece.
Ew, this is almost to the point of it's an amphora. Quite large.
Yeah.
Once again, the rim, everted, carenated style, ring base. This is more towards the end of the Middle Bronze Age. So here we're at the Hyksos period. And we start to lose those trifurcated handles, and they become
Bifurcated. Nice piece again. Yeah, a little bigger and
only the best for you people. Come on, man. Now, this is from the end of the Middle Bronze Age. Once again, it's almost a transitional piece. So we're at the Hyksos period, but basically when the Hyksos period is coming to an end around 1550 BC. Now, I had to do some restoration on this vessel, and it, almost looks like a crater / chalice. But really what we have here, you can see some faint paint. Now, I know it's too faint for the camera.
right.
But you know what this was? If I wet it down, which I can't right now, and it's very faded, and I don't want to actually lose any of this paint because it's very, very faint. This actually had the sacred tree on it, the tree of life.
Okay.
Now, understand the tree of life is that when we look at the cults throughout the Near East, whatever it is, whether it's Egyptian, whether it's Canaanite, they are fertility cults. And of course, fertility means prosperity, not just for the crops and the cattle, but also for us as well. That means fertility. You're having children, and your children grow up so that they can have children. This is all part of fertility cults. Sometimes when we think of fertility, the only thing that people think is Hollywood and sex, but that's part of it, right? But fertility means prosperity, and you can see these on votive cultic items when we see things like the sacred tree, prosperity in the tree. So interesting.
Nice piece.
Now, once again, this would be the Hyksos period, the end of the end of the Middle Bronze Age period. Now I'm going to throw this one in. Now I'm throwing this one in because sometimes we have similar styles of pottery, but it's different periods of time.
They put the handles on the bottom on that one.
So you can almost call it not a looped base to it. Isn't that interesting? And it has this comb design. You can see it right here. It looks like a combing design.
Yeah.
Now this actually starts to appear in the intermediate Bronze Age, but it also continues into the Iron Age, this type of decoration.
Nice.
Once again, completely intact.
Yeah, beautiful.
So here we have pottery representing the early part of the Middle Bronze Age during the time period where you could say the tomb of Khnumhotep was being built and constructed. Pottery from that time period. Why is that important? Because it's the it's the 12th dynasty of Egypt. We're around 2000 BC, and they are starting to use the potter's wheel instead of pottery that is handmade.
Right.
And this is why we see this very unique style of pottery that shows up. We see the curves, the carination, we see the ring bases, and also that last vessel that I showed you that looked like a chalice. We also have votive items. And what do we see when we see painting on votive items? That gives us more of a cultural understanding of fertility of that time period. So with that in mind, what makes this presentation different than any other presentation of the Beni-Hasan tombs is we showed you actually artifacts from that time period.
Wait, bring the real stuff.
David, this is my story from the museum, and I appreciate the Museum of Archaeology and Biblical History for loaning us these very rare and intact items to share with those that are subscribed and who are going to subscribe to Biblical Archaeology from the ground up, sponsored on Bible Internet. Hey, was that good promotion?
Yeah, good. Well, yeah, thanks
right.
everyone for tuning in and for liking and subscribing to the podcast. We're getting up there to almost 210,000, something like that.
Yeah, we should be 210 by maybe tomorrow.
Yeah, so that's pretty amazing. So really appreciate the interest in everyone showing in the podcast, and for the museum for sharing some of their really rare items and allowing us to share this with our audience.
Right, and we do appreciate it. Matter of fact, if you look behind this year right here, you can see the award that YouTube gave us for hitting 100,000. And so it's been a very, very fun year for us. We had no idea that this was going to happen, and we'll continue to get into the museum vaults and share with you as many artifacts as we can. And notice, David, also the rubber gloves.
Got your gloves on.
Got my gloves on today. All right. No glove, no love. Everybody have a good day. And thank you for being a part of our program.
See you next week.
See you.
As we wrap up our journey through the vibrant Beni-Hasan mural, we hope you've been captivated by its vivid depictions of ancient life, trade, and culture. These tombs offer a window into the world of the Asiatics in Middle Kingdom Egypt, frozen in time. But before we go, here's a little something to ponder. Now for the rest of the story. Did you notice that there were no horses in the mural, just donkeys and ibex? What's the deal with no horses? Were they domesticated yet? Or were they simply not part of the Asiatic world at the time? It's a curious detail to leave you with, sparking questions and inviting you to dig deeper into the past. Thanks for joining us, and until next time, keep exploring history's mysteries. Thanks for watching.